Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 700 Club. Israel's ceasefire with Hezbollah is in danger of falling apart. Israeli officials are warning Lebanon to step up its efforts to disarm the terror group to prevent more fighting.
Meanwhile, Israel is shaking up its global messaging campaign. The new strategy is taken from advice given by the late Charlie Kirk to Benjamin Netanyahu. CBN's Paul Petit has this update from Jerusalem.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with President Donald Trump's envoy for Lebanon affairs as border tensions continue to escalate in northern Israel. Israeli officials say last year's ceasefire with Hezbollah is unraveling, and without significant changes, another round of fighting in the north is almost inevitable. One Israeli official says they've warned Lebanon's government that it's failing to disarm Hezbollah as required, adding that the terror group has boosted its ranks and restocked rockets smuggled through Syria. While visiting wounded troops in a hospital near Tel Aviv, Netanyahu repeated his goal to expand a demilitarized buffer zone along the Israel-Syria border. The prime minister says he's open to a Syria deal, but will not allow any repeat of October 7.
We are determined to protect our communities on our borders, including the northern border, and to prevent the establishment of terrorists and hostile actions against us, to protect our Druze allies, and to ensure the state of Israel is safe from a ground attack and other attacks from the areas adjacent to the border.
Last week's targeted counter-terror raid in southern Syria left 6 IDF soldiers wounded. Meanwhile, small remains of a body delivered from the Gaza Strip is not that of any remaining hostages. The bodies of 2 hostages yet to be delivered as part of the ceasefire deal with Hamas include an Israeli and Thai captive. In the public relations war, Israel is overhauling its international communications, sparked by a warning in this letter from Charlie Kirk to Benjamin Netanyahu, sent days before Kirk's assassination. Kirk urged Netanyahu to confront what he called a losing information war among young Americans. U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee echoed those concerns in an interview with CBN News in September.
I'll be the first to say I think Israel's got to do a better job of their own messaging.
If you were the PR consultant for them, what would you tell them?
I'd tell them to get a bunch of social media influencers, because the real problem is with Generation Z.
In his letter, Kirk advised targeting Christian evangelicals to help spread accurate information in support of Israel.
I think that Christian evangelicals, they play a pivotal role in that. And if we have Christian evangelicals watching this, so I have to say thank you from us Israelis. We really cherish that. I think that you were called for such a time as this to use your voice and to not be silent.
The Israeli government now is taking a more centralized messaging strategy, modeled by the White House and Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Shosh Bedrosian, the prime minister's spokesperson for foreign media, stepped into her role just days after Kirk's letter. She now issues daily briefings as Israel tries to regain control of its global narrative. Paul Petit, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks so much, Paul. Turning to political news here at home. President Trump and the Republican Party were closely watching a special House election in Tennessee last night. Republican Matt Van Epps won by a healthy 9 points, but it's a far cry from Trump's 22-point margin in that district in 2024. The narrowing gap is raising concerns about the 2026 midterm elections. All this as the president is facing low poll numbers and a growing crisis over an attack on an alleged drug smuggling boat. And CBN chief political analyst David Brody joins us now for more. David, let's start with the Tennessee election. How are Republicans interpreting the outcome of this race in view of the 2026 midterms?
Not good, Andrew. They're nervous. Here's a riddle for you. When is a victory not a victory? Well, the answer was last night in Tennessee. 9 points isn't going to cut it, Andrew, when you're winning, as you mentioned, a district that President Trump won by plus 20. The former Congressman Mark Green won that district by plus 24. And if you look inside the numbers, not to geek out once again, but in the rural counties of that district, Democrats were performing the Democrat candidate, I should say, was performing 10 points better than Democrats normally do, and that's in the rural areas. And let's also remember, icing on the cake for the Democrats, if you will, even though they lost, they ran a very liberal candidate. They were calling her the AOC of Tennessee, and she was still doing better than previous Democrats in the rural counties. So you put it all together, and that's not necessarily a victory, even though it was a victory for the Republicans. You wonder what would happen if the Democrats ran a centrist, a center-left candidate. That candidate could have actually won in Tennessee last night.
All right, David, so the latest Gallup poll shows the president's approval ratings are 36%, disapproval 60%. Why do you think we're seeing these numbers, and what can the president do about it?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, you know, a lot of times when these polls come out, you'll hear me say time and time again, it's a poll, it's a snapshot in time. I'm not convinced on the methodology of the polls. But Andrew, in this case, we are seeing a trend, and that trend continues to be his poll numbers, the president's poll numbers continuing to go down. And it's pretty much across all polls. I mean, look, even Rasmussen Reports, which is more of a conservative polling group, has it at about 45%, but that's down from 51%. So the point is, the trend is down. And what are they going to do about it? Well, clearly the buzzword, as you know, Andrew, has been affordability. Democrats are capitalizing on that. They did it in the special election in Tennessee last night. And the other day, it's interesting because President Trump yesterday on Tuesday at the cabinet meeting said what the Democrats are saying about affordability is, quote, a con job. Now, of course, for many Americans who see affordability as a real issue, that may not go over well. But what he's referring to, just to be clear, when he says a con job, is that the purchasing power, in other words, real wages in a paycheck under the Biden administration, was 4% less regarding real wages in the paychecks under the Biden administration. That, according to the Heritage Foundation. Now, under the president, it's up 1%. Now, 1% from 4% down. So in other words, 4 minus 1 is 3%. So it's still down. There's still an affordability problem. It's getting a little better, but what the president is saying is that he inherited a lot of this from President Biden, and so they believe that eventually they'll come out of it. And quite frankly, in answer to your question, the only way this is going to help or actually be positive for the Republicans is they've got to be good in the economy. Those numbers have got to turn around in Q1 and Q2 because of that big, beautiful bill that we kept hearing about. Well, they hope that the fruition of all of the labor through that bill, the results will come in January and Q1, and then, of course, Q2 of 2026.
All right, the big story this week, the controversy over the U.S. military attack on an alleged drug smuggling boat. A second strike killed 2 survivors, raising questions if it was legal. How do you think the administration's response has been, and is it hurting them? Could it hurt them going forward?
We don't know at this point, inconclusive. And the reason I say that is because you have Republicans now on Capitol Hill. For example, Roger Wicker, the head of the Senate Armed Services Committee, is going to hold a hearing into, in essence, a fact-finding mission of what really happened. And that's why I say inconclusive, because we had that Washington Post story. We had a New York Times story suggesting that Pete Hegseth had ordered the kill strikes on the second strike. But once again, that has now been refuted by the White House. So until we get more facts, we actually get video and audio of what actually went down, we're not going to know. And then we'll have a better sense of how this will actually impact the administration.
All right, we know it's not the first time Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has faced controversy. There's also talk that FBI Director Kash Patel is in hot water over some actions. Do you think we'll see a shakeup in this cabinet?
I don't think it'll be with Hegseth for sure, because MAGA still has his back. And it's important to really track not liberals so much, but where the MAGA base is. If the MAGA base is frustrated, then you could see something. But I don't see it with Hegseth. Kash Patel, a little bit with MAGA. They're a bit frustrated on some of what he's done, especially as it relates to Epstein. But it's Pam Bondi that I think could be the first one to go here. I wouldn't be surprised if it's this month, maybe in early January or February. But I think she could be the first to get nixed, if you will. And I think that's where you'll see the shakeup.
All right, David, always appreciate your insights. Thanks for joining us today.
You bet. Thanks, Andrew.